Hey, Root Wings community. I wanted to just jump on here to give a more of like a formal kind of rundown of everything that's happening right now, because I think that when times are as maddening and wild as they are right now, it's really easy to feel so overwhelmed that you don't even know what to do. And then that knowing not what to do is an added stress, and it can just drive people into drive them into despair. So I thought, why don't we just go through what's actually happening right now and then what we can do about those different things that are happening. So let's start with the Hurricane Helene news. As many of you know, back on Friday, Hurricane Helene made landfall out in North Carolina. It affected South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee area. So it was a concentrated area, but because it was such a significant hurricane and it was in areas that don't see this kind of devastation from a hurricane like this, the people were not prepared. And there's a lot coming in on how late to the game government actually sent out preparation notices for people. It's obviously just been a horrific mess. I have been working literally around the clock for the last, 3 days now, 2 days, to try to get as much information out to you that is unfiltered and raw, because as we've learned, the mainstream media isn't sharing everything that's actually happening out there. And that's a shame, because people are very hurt right now, and there's so much destruction. There are people who are without water. There are people out in Asheville, North Carolina, that have been without power since Friday. There are hospitals that are on limited water, limited power. There is shortage of gas, and you have people trying to get out to get gas, and there's chaos at these gas stations because of the rationing or the run on gas. And then food is running low too. So I have been receiving so many direct messages from people in the areas affected, really a lot from North Carolina, Asheville area, and then some in East Tennessee as well. And some South Carolina. So I've been receiving so many messages just sharing what it's like on the ground and how horrific. And the term that keeps coming up is post-apocalyptic. These scenes of these homes literally being underwater in these areas, and so much destruction. I've profiled a few of the stories on Instagram. You can follow there, Rooted_Wings. And just to show people that this is very serious. Now, here's what's amazing. And this is where I want us to turn our hearts and our eyes to is there's a saying that in times of crises, look for the helpers. And that's always stuck with me. And right away, I started recognizing the helpers out there, people who dove in headfirst, who didn't hesitate to show up and to begin bringing relief and help for these people who had just been devastated. I put together, because so many of you guys asked me who I was supporting and who they could support. So late last night, I put together a document that is an evolving document. So if you click onto it, it may look different than it did yesterday, because I will continue to add as we go, organizations who are boots on the ground doing work because they are the Lord's hands and feet, and not because they are showing up because the government told them to. These are people who are out there. A large number of them are veterans and are going just because they feel called to be the helpers. So I'm going to pull up, as I'm talking, this document. And if you go to wearerootedwings.com, the first big box that you can click on is the Hurricane Helene relief document. And it's going to take you to an article that looks like this. You can't see it, it's blurry, but it looks like this. In this article, it says shareable document here. And when you click it, it's going to take you to a Google Doc that I personally created. And I have spoken with all of the organizations listed on here and can vouch for them in terms of being legitimate and actually being there to help people. So if you're looking for ways to support, these are some great options. And then also one of the important things at the top of the document is if you have a loved one that is missing in or near Asheville or Rutherford, please email my team, submissionsrootedwings@protonmail.com. I am currently actively coordinating with a couple of incredible organizations who I'm in frequent contact with, who are on the ground to get to people. And actually, a lot of these organizations are veterans, and veteran run, veteran based, veteran built, and they know how to get in and they know how to help. So for those rescue teams, if you're going to email me, I need a last known location, time of last contact, full name, date of birth, and last known condition. If you email me, I am checking that email personally around the clock. And then depending on where those locations are coming in with the MIAs, I'm then sending them and copying the sends to a couple different organizations who are on the ground there. So that's somewhere for us to turn our eyes to, is instead of looking at the devastation and just being so overwhelmed and then checking out and not even wanting to know like what's happening out there, we can actually look to the helpers and we can think of ways that we can creatively support these efforts. We can share this document at bare minimum so that other people can support the relief efforts. And I just actually heard that Trump started a GoFundMe, and I need to look and make sure that that's accurate. But if so, I will be adding that GoFundMe to this list as well. So that's Hurricane Helene. Then late last night or this morning around midnight, 12:01, there was a big port walk-off. So these longshoremen who are union and are responsible for a ton of the goods that end up on our shelves. They had been since this summer, there had been some dispute in pay. From what we know, there have been some dispute in pay and also the concern of their work becoming more AI and kind of offshored to technology. And so they were at an impasse in terms of figuring out a solution for higher wages that these longshoremen were demanding and contract issues. And we knew that the threat of a strike was looming, but I don't know how many people actually took it seriously that these guys were actually going to walk off. Well, at 12:01 this morning, the strike began. So here are the implications of this strike. With this strike, every day that these guys aren't working, they're not pulling things off cargo, nothing's shipping in and shipping out. We are at a standstill. It is going to, depending on how long this thing goes, it has the potential to cripple our economy even worse than we already are and make our inflation go sky high again because there's going to be limited supply and high demand. Now, this is all affecting, I think, if I remember right, it's Texas, Jersey, up the East Coast. And so it's kind of along the same area where you had these hurricanes going in, if you want to picture it on a map. But because those ports of entry are so significant, it is going to affect the entire nation. So again, let's refocus on what we can actually do about it instead of freaking out and running around like scared sheep. Yes, it's a significant issue. Yes, it is a concern. I have been saying for a long, long time to get your house in order and to do it slowly and steadily, to start preparing, because I think things are going to get really wild as we get closer and closer to November and January. Not everyone did, and that's okay. Like it's not, there are reasons why some people were not able to fortify. And now you're looking at this situation and thinking, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because are we looking at COVID 2.0 where I'm not going to be able to get toilet paper? That's probably going to be the least of your concerns. My recommendation is to take a deep breath and then two things: to go to the Costco or go to a big store where you can get as many good bulk supplies that are going to be shelf stable and freezer stable for a while. I would highly recommend doing what you can now to shore up your own resources, because that's going to be important. I have no idea how long this strike is going to go. I've been reading mixed reviews on on it, but I've watched interviews with the international president. And if you go to my X account, Britt Rooted, and you also go to my Instagram, you can see an interview that this guy gave that will kind of show you just what we're working with. So this guy is, sorry, it's blurry. Harold Daggett. He is the president of the International Longshoremen's Association. And if you watch this interview, and he's given another interview since then that I'll post later, you're going to get a really good feel for what we are working with. And his show of strength is that he will cripple the United States without blinking to get what he wants so that his demands are met. So we're dealing with a very, very strong personality who doesn't seem like he's wanting a compromise. So because of that, it would behoove us as families throughout the nation to consider the implications, I can't talk, the implications of this strike, and then to do your best now to begin fortifying your family. So before there is a full panic, which I think if this strike continues, we could see that hit in the next 2 weeks. Where there would be panic, because then you're going to start to really notice bare shelves. So shelf-stable food, freezer-stable food, medications that you need, dog food, animal food if you have large animals. Make sure your gas tanks are full. And then if you go to wearerootedwings.com and you scroll down a little bit, there is a link there. It's one of the boxes that says, get your house in order. That is a one-stop shop that has, as much as I could think of over the last 2 years, things that my family has personally invested in, and that will help you fortify against whatever is coming, thinking big picture with everything we have going on with this election and a possible transfer of power in January. Now is the time to get on top of that. So that's what we can focus on instead of being so obsessed with every headline that drops about the shoremen. Instead, just focus on fortifying your family so that you can almost laugh at the future and just say, bring it. We are going to be as fortified as possible. Another good idea that my publicist actually, she's amazing, had was to get in touch with your local farmers. A lot of local farmers have community supported agriculture programs. And I know through COVID, I relied on that, where they will ship a box to you, like every 2 weeks, that has fresh veggies and fresh fruit, sometimes eggs and honey. And that's a great way to now, before people start to freak out and look for these options, if you can now get yourself in the system where you're in the delivery cycle, then that might be a good idea too, so that you're not dependent on whatever is coming from overseas not being delivered to your local grocery store. Okay, and then lastly, we just had breaking news with Israel and ballistic missiles being fired from Iran at Israel. And obviously just the tensions there that are rising overseas, and the concern of, is this going to drag us into a full-scale World War III? There's a lot going on with all of that. Here is my suggestion. It's good to know the times in which we live. It's good to be aware of international politics, especially geopolitical warfare, and how that could pull us in, because you're talking allies and enemies with America. Regardless of what your opinions are on that, that's factual. So yes, it's good and it's important to know what's going on. I would never say turn a blind eye. But also there is a danger in allowing yourself to become so consumed with everything, with every piece of bad news, that you're almost paralyzed by the fear of the what ifs and just waiting for the next terrible headline to hit. So my suggestion is, know that the Middle East is on fire literally right now, that there are terrible things happening over in the Israel region. And we should be praying for God's mercy over that conflict. But I truly believe that we have to look after our own right now. We need to turn our eyes on our families and make sure that our homes are fortified, that our refrigerators are as stocked as they can be, that our shelves are as stocked as they can be, that we have gone through the all the preparation possible so that if things escalate and get really, really bad and we start seeing activity here on the homeland or, with the open border, whatever happens with who we're bringing in and what kind of escalation we could see with that because of everything going on over in Iran and Israel, then at least we will have done our due diligence to not be so stricken by fear that we didn't think to prepare for the possibility of what that could lead to and how that could affect and impact our homes and our families. So that goes back to making sure that you have your house in order. And my best starting points for you are to go to wearerootedwings.com, drop down onto that little block that says house in order, go through it, pick out the things that you can, get quickly to support yourself and your family and fortify your home. And then stock up your freezers and shelves as best as you can. I know that it looks different for everyone. I grew up in an insanely poor single mom family, and I know how hard it is to buy extra. There are creative ways. So I would say be creative. Think communal. So if you have friends and family that's local, start talking with them about how you guys can support each other. And then that's the final thing, is to tribe up. Find your neighbors and your friends who are close by and have plans of how, in the event of things going from bad to worse, how you're going to support each other, what your plan is, what are you going to do with the kids and the women if things start to escalate, and how fortified are you in terms of defense? And that's very, very important. Lone wolfing is not a recipe for making it out well. So tribe up, get your house in order, and then get your eyes on the good. There is still so much good in this world. And I know that right now the headlines are hit after hit after hit of the terror and the ugly and the scary and the tragic. But we have to discipline ourselves to find the good, to look for the helpers, to look at our kids and to put down our phones and to play with our children, to love on our husbands, to call our friends, check in on them, and just talk about anything other than the darkness and the chaos. Find organizations that you can support who are the helpers, who are being the good and the salt and the light out there in the areas that are hurting. And I really think that that's the way we make it through, is having our home as fortified as possible, our kids as filled up, their little tanks as filled up as we can. And then in addition to that, having our minds in a place that is healthy and grounded and not constantly moving from fear to fear to fear to fear. So that's my suggestion right now at this time that we find ourselves in. It is going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I believe we're going to make it through this. I think that it's going to be dicey for a while, which is why I wouldn't suggest being ignorant and pretending it all away. I think there are things we can do to prepare and plan now, but then don't run around like a frightened sheep or huddle in little corners crying. We have to be strong through this and keep our mind on the things that are good. Open up your Bible, sing some hymns, give your kids bubble tubs, make a nice dinner, and put your phone down. All right, that's it. I will talk to you later.